but we have a few still trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Erika Pfister with GRW Engineers, and today we get the privilege of listening to some of the finest KYTC engineers in the state talk about their design build projects and their challenges and interesting questions about that. It'll be a panel format, so it'll be pretty interesting. This is also, of course, virtual. If any of you have questions at the end, we'll open it up, and those of at virtual land, you can type in the questions, and I'll be able to see them and ask the panelists. So we have Erika Drury, Brandon Sider, Chris Slone, and Emily Deason will be talking to you today. So, Erika.
Good morning. I'm Erika Drury. I'm the Alternative Delivery Program Manager. I just wanted to give you guys a quick program update before we start the panel discussion. My main focus since I've started this role has been consistency. Consistency in the program itself, meaning working toward a program of jobs rather than sporadic jobs, as well as consistency in how we deliver these projects. We brought 2 alternative delivery consultants on an on-call contract to help with that, WSP and American Structure Point. That contract was awarded in February, I think, and we've hit the ground running. In order to build a consistent program, we need to be looking at potential projects ahead of time, more proactively instead of reactively. Design bid build is always going to be the backbone of our construction program, but alternative delivery gives us more tools in the toolbox for projects with specific challenges. Another big change in the program is that Amanda Desmond has been recently added a new role to her repertoire as the location engineer for alternative delivery projects. So that can really help us streamline the design review process. I've had several questions recently, and I'm working on posting a potential projects list to the alternative delivery section of construction procurement's homepage. I'm sure I can convince Eric Pelfrey to post that to his website as well. We have about 7 alternative delivery projects that we intend to advertise this year. Several of the projects are going to be traditional design bid build, but we are going to utilize CMGC for the I-65 Bridge Rehab project, and we're gonna let 2 progressive design build projects, Kentucky 8 Lake and River project in District 6 and 421 in District 11. They also released a few weeks ago, I'm sure everybody saw that for instance, is going to be progressive design build with Ohio as the lead agency, KYTC supporting. We're working on planning a more in-depth program overview for industry in November. So be looking for that. Best practice for both of those methods requires us to have an independent cost estimator. So we'll have an RFP advertising for that September 13th. We're going to select 2 independent cost estimator consultants. Donnie Miracle is going to be the project manager for that out of the Division of Construction Procurement, and we'll use that statewide on the 2 progressive jobs and the CMGC job. It's also very likely that for most of these projects, we'll let project specific CEIs. There may be a few cases where a district has a robust enough in-house inspection team that they can do it on their own. But for the most part, they're going to be project specific CEIs. So that's all I had for a program update, and I'll let these guys introduce themselves for the panel.
I'm Chris Slone, District 5 Project Manager for the I Move Kentucky project. We had letting in September 2019, went through some design for a few months, started construction in March of 2020, about 4 days before the pandemic hit and we all got to go home. So the last couple of years I've went through several challenges, and we may talk about that a little more here today as we go.
My name is Emily Deason. I'm from District 2. I'm the project manager for ORX in Henderson. We awarded our project December 2021, and we are just getting really wrapped up with construction.
I'm Brandon Sider, District 6. I'm our alternate delivery project manager. Currently overseeing 3 projects. Bridge Road project is wrapping up. Our infra design build of the Ridgewood Mount Zion interchanges in Boone County. And we're currently working on procurement for progressive design build project of the 4th Street Bridge in Buffington.
All right, well, I get started with questions. So what are the attributes of a project that you guys feel like make it a good alternative delivery candidate?
I think what makes a really good alternative delivery candidate is, you have to have some sort of complexity, whether it be complexity in construction, complexity in design, utilities, right away, whatever the complexity may be. I think, we can do, KYTC has shown, with our partners and, the great design firms we work with, that we can almost do any project as a traditional design bid build. But what sets these apart is we're looking for that complexity and especially some innovation in other projects, as we move forward with those, complex projects. So I think that's one thing that really makes a great alternative delivery project is, the fact that we can identify, the innovation and the complexity from the forefront of that project.
Yeah, I think Chris is absolutely right. And one of the other big advantages for our projects is the speed of delivery for a project. Design, build, and alternate delivery allow you to do some things a little differently than traditionally would. And for example, our Bridge Road project, we were able to open a new interchange on an incredibly aggressive timeline because we were able to do some of the phases in parallel rather than sequence. You didn't have to have all the right of way cleared before you could start construction. So we could put packages together and focus on really critical areas and deliver a project faster than traditional means. So similarly on the Ridgewood design build, we had a pretty large obstacle in Norfolk Southern Railroad. Going design build allowed us to get the project started before we had fully sorted out Norfolk, which we're 3 years in, we still haven't fully sorted them out, but hey, we've completed a lot of other things in the meantime. So it's definitely one of the big advantages to use.
All right, next question. When you guys are going through the selection process for best value, what are you looking for in a DBT?
I think one component or several components that we look for is the ability to collaborate and cooperate with one another. One of the things that we've been doing on our project that's been successful is the contractor has requested to meet with us to go over best practices, to go over, maybe pitfalls that we might see coming, to help see recommendations from our side on how things could run more smoothly in the future. We were able to actually have that meeting before construction really got revved up, and we have another one scheduled for end of September. So just a really good opportunity to talk to the contractor, and open communication is another one, and transparency, to be able to, give our needs, hear their needs. We don't always expect to get a yes, and we can't always tell them yes. But just being willing to, listen to one another and be open about it, I think is a really key to factor that we look for in some buildings.
I was lucky enough to go through my own procurement, and then I was lucky enough to have Emily let me join the ORX procurement. Things we always look for when we come to these alternative delivery projects is we're looking for contractors and teams that are very competent. You're looking for contractors that do have the ability to self-perform some of the work. Of course, they need to meet 30% guideline, by KYTC standards and specs, but you're looking for ones that can do a little more than that. Ones that can do more than just the 30%, because, in the end of the game, when you're looking at timelines and, CPN diagrams, the more they have control of, the better off they're going to be as they move forward with that.
Having been through the majority of a couple of design build projects now, I think to Emily's point, the emphasis on collaboration and cooperation is really paramount. When everybody's working together, you see the big advantages of why design build or another alternate delivery can be successful. When everybody's not playing nicely, you see the flaws really quickly. So I mean, to me, that's just absolutely paramount. Having everybody on the same page really makes it.
That's the perfect segue into the next question, which is, what has your experience been with partnering with your DVT?
My experience has been great. We decided to, I guess what they call co-locate with our, at least the construction part of our design build team. Not as much the design part. But Hall, I work with Hall Contracting. They set up an office. It's a 2-level facility. They have the upstairs and KYTC and my staff have the downstairs. You can't hang up the phone and then run back down to your office because your office is only 60 feet away. You know, you have to work through the problems, like you would almost in, you know, at your house or, you know, in your normal office that you go through every day, because, you know, no matter what happens on the project or the fights you have or what you go through, you're still located in the same office. You're going to run into the same person when you have to go to the restroom or when you go to get your lunch at the refrigerator. So it's kind of one of those where, you know, a lot of people doesn't like the co-location, but I think on a large project that you're going to be going through a lot of issues, it definitely pays itself forward. And you do get to be friends and coworkers with the design build team because you do see them on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. We currently are co-located with our DVT as well. And it's been a really positive experience so far. The barrier to communicate is so small. You know, we're able to walk across the hall, we're able to have conversations, to move things along a lot quicker. Even to get to meetings, you know, just walk across the hall, it's not even driving across town. So I think it's also it's more effective, to be more effective that way. We also see the need and necessity to have private conversations. So similar to Chris, you know, we're able to close the door and have our own private, you know, conference room, and the DVTs are able to do the same. But it really does, you know, the conversation that happened in the parking lot, you know, running into somebody, and it just seems to make things move along quicker. We even had submittal the other day that we received a revision on and had some questions. We just walked across the hall, grabbed the project manager and roadway lead, marked it up right then, got the revision the next day. I mean, that would have taken multiple emails back and forth. You know, and rather than thinking that they didn't hear us the first time, we were able to have a conversation around it for smoother communication and just something, you know, so we've really enjoyed our co-location experience.
My projects are probably the outlier because we do not do co-location, and having multiple projects, I'm not sure exactly how I would co-locate on multiple projects at the same time, but, you know, not being there, you know, they did a really good job of emphasizing the advantages to that. And when you're not co-located, as the project manager, I feel like a lot of times I'll referee, you know, conflict resolution. And it's not just, you know, the contractor versus us. Sometimes it's our design staff versus theirs, and understanding preference versus, you know, requirements, and keeping everybody focused on what the main goal is. You know, we can fight about little issues here and there, but all of our goal is to deliver a successful project. And keeping everybody aligned to that goal takes some effort sometimes. And, you know, COVID, as Chris mentioned, COVID flared up right in the middle of these projects. So we had to completely change the way we do business. And it's really easy, and everybody's gotten really good at virtual meetings and email and digital communication, but sometimes you have to have those face-to-face interactions. Sometimes you have to pick up the phone and call somebody to work through issues. So, you know, as the PM, we're really just trying to keep everybody focused on what the goal is. And certainly it sounds like co-location is a good way to do that, but if you're not, you can still obviously get there, but it presents some additional challenges.
Brainers, like you have a list of my questions, and just perfectly segue into the next slide. So I know you guys all handle this differently, but how do each of you handle the design review process on your projects?
We handle the, design review process mainly using, our owner's rep to do the review process. So, and then we reach out to our KYTC leads, as needed, and they have been, great to be responsive and to really help us out. It seems to have been, working, really well so far. I know Chris is a couple years into the project and might have additional comments on how that process works.
Yeah, our process is pretty much the same. We use a lot of consultant review on ours. Michael Baker has been extremely helpful. KYTC structural design, KYTC traffic, KYTC geotech. All those groups have been extremely helpful as we go along the process. When a submittal comes in, we have to decide where that submittal is going. QK4 has taken the lead on a lot of our submittal reviews, and they've done an excellent job. A lot of that comes down to also is what is an actual requirement on the project and what's a KYTC preference. We tried to, I know Brandon said, we've all had issues with this, is KYTC has a lot of preferences that are sometimes not written down. I think Joe Van Zee has rewritten most of the structure guidance manual based on some issues we've had on the job at times. But it's hard to make sometimes KYTC staff, through traditional design bid build, you get more of those preferences in there. Well, when we're going through a design build process, the standard pretty much is the FHWA requirements. That's what you're really shooting for. And sometimes those preferences can be accommodated, and sometimes those preferences cannot be accommodated. And when those preferences cannot be accommodated, generally that's when I have to pick up a phone or whatever and let someone know that I know you really wanted that, and I know that you really prefer that, but it's not a requirement, and that's something that I can enforce and will not enforce on the project.
One of the things Chris makes a great point. One of the things that I think is hard to understand when you haven't been through this is we've asked these design build teams to submit a price based on 30% plans. They've made a lot of assumptions based on what requirements are. So when you get in there and you start doing that design, a lot of times we're used to, through our design process, adding things later because that's how we want to do it. And that's fine because the contractor hasn't even bid it yet. But in design build, particularly traditional design build, they've already assigned the cost to that. So, that understanding that when we ask them to go above and beyond, there is a cost to that, and you can't just change it on the fly. And I think for all of us, that's an adjustment in mindset that we've had to make. Speaking to my projects on the design review process, I'm a little bit different than them. If you haven't done, seem to be different on everything so far, but we use mostly in-house design review for our projects, particularly on Graves Road. Our district staff did a great job. Mike Weasel and his staff, Carol Callahan, they were all invaluable in helping us get through the iterations of design. Central office has been fantastic throughout the process. All of our subject matter experts have been really, really great helping out with reviews, both in design and in construction. And, as I mentioned, on a normal project, you go through these iterations and we have weeks, sometimes months to review things in the back. We have clauses in our contract that says we get 10 days to review certain submittals, 14 days. Or there are contractual, penalties potentially on us. So it's a totally different mindset and ballgame. And I can't speak highly enough about the dedication from all of our staff and how they have taken time to make sure that they got us what we needed. They've all been really good. Erika in her role has been awesome at helping to guide us. This is really new for all of us. So, the first time we go through, sometimes we talk to each other. Well, how are you handling this? And Erika's done a great job as well, kind of keeping us all on that consistent path. And, last but not least, FHWA has been a great partner for us as well. Both of my projects had federal input with a federal grant for one of the projects. And anytime an issue has come up, I've been able to text or email Michael, hey, you have time for a quick chat on something. He's always made time and brought in whoever he needed to from his staff to have a call to make sure we were looking at everything we were supposed to and going about it the right way. So, we've had great, and I kind of consider FHWA internal, they're part of that team, but everybody's done a really great job. So it's a little bit different than what they've done.
Okay. Well, what do you guys feel like has been added value for your design build? I know that sometimes we get stuck in, well, we're getting the bare minimum when we do a design build project, and I know that there's added value. So what have you guys seen?
I think the added value in the iMove project is the fact that it's all getting done and it's all getting done now. You know, it was 4 projects that got combined and they were on 4 different trajectories as it was moving forward. I think eventually they all would have gotten done, but they all would not have been in the construction process at this time frame. You know, we work with the design lead for the DVT is American Engineers, AEI. And, you know, they have done a wonderful job of making the design uniform across the 24 miles of roadway that we're working with. So we've definitely got a more uniform design. We were able to get the construction moving on the entire project. And the biggest, one of the other big, you know, added value that we get is flexibility. You know, this has been a trying couple of years. You know, I get a letter every week from a supplier or from the DVT. You know, we're having steel shortages, we're having cement shortages. You know, we're having trouble getting stay-in-place pans. You know, we can't get parts for this piece of equipment. We can't get parts for that piece of equipment. It adds a lot of flexibility. Design build, progressive design build, and CMGC add a lot of flexibility for KYTC and the teams that, you know, we can kind of pivot and work on something else or move forward, or maybe come up with some ideas that, you know, have maybe been pushed aside in the past. But because of what we're dealing with currently, we've been able to bring some of those ideas, you know, back to the forefront and make them part of the project.
I think a lot of times we focus on value as dollar and cents, and sometimes that can be the case, but there's a lot of other ways that projects can add value. And, you know, Grade Road specifically, being able to get that interchange open quickly provided just huge value to the region. You know, it allowed us to relieve traffic congestion. You know, if you're not familiar with the project, it's very close to CBG Airport, and there's huge residential area and a lot of industrial warehouses that were utilizing essentially the same interchange, and it caused huge traffic issues, both for people just trying to do their daily commute and for these companies to get deliveries to it. So we were able to open up the new interchange before the peak shipping season that year. So, you know, from Thanksgiving to Christmas is prime time for those companies, and there's a huge Amazon facility next door, UPS, Wayfair, you name it. There's a big box there that's critical to everybody that does their online Christmas shopping here. Something probably came from one of those facilities at some point. So, you know, there was terrific value in getting that out there and getting that accomplished. That, you know, maybe doesn't always show up in dollars and cents. Conversely, on the Richwood and Mount Zion, we were able to utilize a federal input grant for that. And those grants come with timeline qualifications, and being able to go to design build allowed us to utilize those funds. So there was a very tangible dollar that, you know, we were able to utilize that we maybe wouldn't have been able to utilize if we not gone design build. You know, we might still be waiting on that project to go to letting go because we may not have cleared the railroad if we not gone to that. So, you know, value isn't always dollars and cents. It's impact to the local communities. So.
I think another added value to design build is the architectural concept process, the ATC process, getting multiple eyes to look at the project and to look through ways to be innovative. That was a really neat process for me to be able to go through. And I think it added a lot of value to the project as a whole.
Well, that's all the scripted questions I have, and fortunately or unfortunately, we're about 15 minutes ahead. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. There you go. We win.
addressing utility issues on design build.
Utility issues on design build, and any of you want to talk about that?
Utilities on my two projects were handled pretty differently. On the Richwood and Mount Zion projects, they went through a more traditional process because plans were essentially done. So our district utility staff did a lot of coordination as they typically would. And you know, Tony Blau, who's our district utilities coordinator, he did an excellent job. And we hadn't been without some utility issues, but it functioned pretty much like a normal design bid build project would as far as utilities. Now, on Graves Road, we were the complete opposite. We turned over the responsibility for utilities to the DBT. We did, before the project was awarded, we kind of worked on a parallel path with the utility companies to let them know what was going on, what was coming. And we allowed the potential DBTs to talk with them as well, get them together, partner them early on, let them form those relationships and figure out how this project was going to go. Fortunately for that project too, it was an off alignment new roadway. So existing utilities weren't quite the issue as they could be on a lot of projects. And we had a few hiccups, but it went really well doing that. And, you know, no project's the same. So to say that that would work perfectly on any project, I don't know, but on that one, it's tended to work pretty well.
On our projects, you know, through our baseline design, we have plans with utilities. And, you know, that was already in place when we went to bid. But any changes that the design build team made to, you know, the alignment or to the corridor, they had to go back with the utility and work with them to make the changes, and then the agreements. So, you know, we really did leave it up to them, you know, once that they were able to make any changes, that those cost savings, they were able to, you know, think of that through and think that ahead and maybe, you know, put that into their bid. But it seems to be going well so far, and the coordination, that, you know, we've really allowed the DBT to, you know, take the lead on coordinating with the utilities.
Do any of you guys, oh, sorry, I didn't think you had utility.
I don't have a whole lot of utilities, like we were in already, interstate corridor. Christian Smith was the utility coordinator for the DBT, did a wonderful job of locating where the utilities we were gonna have conflicts with. And most of the design that we've done has avoided, you know, most utility issues, so we haven't had a lot of utility issues on the project.
Thought maybe a few of you would want to, might want to talk about right away in the same way, how you handle right away on your project and.
We, you know, did attempt to clear, all of the right of way, through the preliminary design process. We did have a few, parcels that were not fully cleared. We disclosed that in the RFP. We gave, you know, a date that we were anticipating getting those parcels cleared by. We finally have right of entry on all of our parcels. Great. But we did also allow the contractor to, during the ATC process, there were a few ATCs that took additional property than we anticipated. So we, through that process, if they identified what parcels they wanted to take, we would give them an estimated, the cost of that process, and that would fit into their bid. So we were able to compare the bids of multiple contractors, apples to apples, versus, you know, this contractor did not take additional parcels and this one did. So that was one way we handle that. If they take a parcel in the rest of the design phase, the acquiring that parcel and the cost of that parcel is on them. We really wanted the PDT to identify any parcels that they were going to take ahead of time. But we really, that's the owners rep, really handled all of the acquisitions, purchasing of them.
Once again, we handled it differently on both of my projects. The Richwood Mount Zion, the majority of the right of way was ready to go on those projects. We obviously had one pretty big problematic parcel that happened to be the railroad that we needed to work through, but it was primarily handled in-house or through our consultants that had been working on the project previously. On Graves Road, on the other hand, we put that responsibility on the design build team. That's obviously a pretty big risk, you know. You never know how long it's gonna take for condemnations to get right of entry and that kind of thing. And ultimately, they did a really good job. You know, they got everything cleared that they needed to. KYTC basically was responsible for writing the check for whatever we agreed to pay for the parcel. And we did a lot of the review, but the DBT was responsible for pretty much every part of the right-of-way process. And, you know, again, COVID hiccups, we had a few condemnations and thought things would move smoothly, but then, you know, the judge wouldn't do anything because of COVID for weeks at a time sometimes. So there was a few antsy moments, I think, particularly on the design build team side, trying to get some of that through, but it went well. You know, at times we go out and meet with parcel owners that had questions, but for the most part, the DBT did a really good job of it and was successful. Everything got cleared in time for all the various buildable units, and I think currently we have 3 parcels that are still in suit that are just kind of sorting out money, and hopefully those get taken care of. But not only did the DBT do a good job, but our right-of-way staff that was involved in the reviews, they really, the touch factor of the central office, they did a great job of understanding what we needed to make the project work, and they did a great job too.
All right, 8 minutes. Any questions?
I have a question, Brandon. Brandon, you mentioned that HWA involvement. Could you give an example?
I'm gonna repeat the question for the virtual people.
Oh, sorry. He asked to give an example of the FHWA involvement. So we've recently had a few things come up where, you know, you look at things and how are we approaching it? And, you know, particularly with the infra project, a lot of the design was done, but if we have something come up that there's a change in the field, you know, we call Michael and say, hey, Michael, we're looking at doing this. We all feel this is a good idea, but we want to make sure that, you know, you guys are on board with this and we check all the appropriate boxes. We don't want you to be caught off guard. So we had an example of, you know, the plans kind of showed a situation that to address a vertical clearance issue, and we looked at what was proposed, and then we found out that, hey, this might present some other problems, and we don't really feel comfortable with this, and there's another project coming that could potentially address it. So we worked with Michael and said, hey, this is what we'd like to do instead. This is our plan, and Michael did a great job of working with us and making sure that, hey, I'm on board with it, I support you, make sure you do X, Y, and Z to make sure that we check all these boxes. So he's been a really good partner for us.
We've also had great support from FHWA with the railroad issues that Brandon's been involved with. They've been always willing to help and push things. Anything else? All right.